Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, race fans, sim fans, RC fans, Racing 393. So we're on to the Wild One, the Blockhead Motors edition. It's been out a while from Tamiya. If you're in the know, you'll also know that the Hot Shot Blockhead Motors edition has just been released. And that will too, there'll be a build video on my channel very soon. But if you watch the video about video on the Wild One, I've already done a few upgrades on it, which include an aluminium front bumper, front shock, and a rear shock, different wheels and tyres, that's on the rear, and that's the front. The tyres just need gluing, so that'll be the last task that I do. So, what are we doing today? I've got 3 upgrades which I will be installing on the car. An aluminium gearbox skid plate, a rear anti-roll bar, and a front anti-roll bar. First thing I'm going to do is fit the front anti-roll bar. It doesn't look too complex, but access might be a little bit difficult. I'm going to break these open and I'll come back with something interesting to tell you. Okay, so what I've done so far is dismantled the front. It's not too bad actually. Took the front trailing arms off, undone the bottom of the shocks. Just got to put some spacers on here between that and the arm. Looks like it's got 2 spacers each side, that's in the kit. I'm now going to put the anti-roll bar. It fits to the underneath of the shock upright, so it goes underneath that. The anti-roll bar ball joint fits onto a bracket which goes onto the bottom of the shock absorber. So yeah, not too bad. It's just a bit fiddly, I suppose, sometimes. But anyway, let me go through the next stage, and I'll bring you back once I've got some of these things installed. Right, like with most aftermarket modifications, what I found is that it's very, very seldom do things go perfectly. It does happen, you know, it's there, but this hasn't. So there's the anti-roll bar lower bracket fits on the lower part of the chassis. I'm going to move the camera, just give me a sec. Here. And that little bracket is threaded. The original screws which mount this, the shock tower, to the chassis is just a typical Tamiya threaded screw, you know, screws into the plastic. That's about 10mm, maybe a bit longer than that. It sticks out slightly. Now, on the bottom of the chassis here, we've got a couple of captive, well, they're not nuts, they're just part of the plastic moulding, but they're kind of a little bit, they sit proud of the underneath here to allow the screws to fit in a bit deeper, I guess. Now in the kit, in this anti-roll bar kit, we get, I don't know if I can show you this, that. So that is a 10mm threaded nut, bolt. God, a threaded bolt, Allen screw. I'll get it right in a minute. That's 10mm. That goes between here, screws this in, and it should sit proud of the bottom, allowing that to screw the anti-roll bar mount in. Well, that ain't long enough. The thing is, I suppose what you could have done is drilled those holes out so they're just slightly, these would slide in but then you're altering the chassis. I didn't really want to do that, because in its standard form, this threaded Allen bolt screws into the chassis quite nicely, and you could actually screw it in and it'd be tight enough to hold this top mount on. But it wasn't quite long enough. It probably would have been if I'd drilled the holes out a little bit. So this fitted in a bit looser. It would have just sat proud a couple of mil to allow me to screw that in. But I didn't really want to alter that, so I had to go and delve, and I found longer Allen bolts. As you can see, but they sit a bit too proud, but it screws it in now. That is actually fitted in, and the anti-roll bar fits onto the bottom of the shock mount with this link. So it's a very good idea, fits really nicely, but again, what comes with the kit isn't long enough. So these here, you get 4 of them, 10. Yeah, they're the ones that come with the kit. They're 10mm. These are kit screws, and they are longer. They're probably about 12. So that's what comes in and screws the top mounts on anyway, and that's what you get with this kit, is anti-roll bar kit, and they're not long enough. So just word of warning, if you do this, you're going to need longer screws. Not the end of the world. The ones I've put in is that. That's for about 20mm. You can see it's probably about, literally, I would say 5mm too long. They're sticking out, but it's on there anyway. So let me. I'm just going to fit the other side. Now I know what the problem is, and I'll bring you back for the next exciting installment. Okay, so that's on the front anti-roll bar. It didn't quite go as easy as it should, as I did expect that. A couple of screws, as you know, weren't the right length. It's very discreet, you don't really know it's on there. But underneath, I'm not sure if I can show you, but underneath here, you've got the bottom link of the anti-roll bar, and that goes onto the bottom of the shock absorber. And there's a long bolt which is supplied, which goes through, which is long enough. There's also a spacer to space that link. Now the spacer they give you is, you see that? Is that. So it's probably about 5mm maybe. It's too thick. It's too wide, so I put my own just nylon spacers that I just had. They're probably about, that's probably like 10mm, isn't it? So they're more like 3mm maybe. So I've put those on there, and that seems to be fine. Now the instructions, these are the instructions. So they're not, although it's fairly easy, it's not super clear. I'm pretty sure there's some dialogue somewhere lost between the original Wild One, the fast attack vehicle, and this one. So the Blockhead edition. You know, for example, that bracket there, but the bottom one where the bottom of the shock fits to, on the Blockhead edition, it's both sides. It's not a single lug. It's got 2 lugs. So that's different. No, these screws that go down here are different. So is the chassis different on the fast attack vehicle or original Wild One? They got some like extra captive inserts, if you like, so the screws to thread into. But yeah, so although it's on, the front shocks are still way too stiff anyway, which I sort of knew that. It kind of bounces around on there, but it is. I'll try and show you what I've done. I've got to sort out the tracking on this. The tracking's not even been done yet. Lower bracket for the anti-roll bar. it kind of rests against the trailing arm at the front. Like that. It's obviously the same the other side. So you can see the screws a little bit long. The top there, look, rests down there, and I'm going to try and show you underneath. Just bear with me. So that's it underneath. It just, the link fits to the bottom of the lug, if you like, a little slight extension. I'll put a little nylon spacer, and it fits on. The trailing arms that you can see there's a couple of brass, was two each side, washers, which sort of space this a little bit, because that lug has to sort of fit near there. It is a little bit Heath Robinson. It clearly isn't made to measure. I'm quite pleased with it. It's just something which is different. I mean, it's not binding up. I might have to try and sort the springs out on here. I think I need softer springs. I think a lot softer. I mean, this isn't even done up fully tight yet here, so that needs to be sorted out. That one is, and it's tracking out a little bit. I mean, it is way out. If it sits a bit lower, it starts to sort of point straight, the tracking. But so I've got to try and sort the springs out, but that'll be the sort of the final jigsaw. I'm going to make sure everything else fits. So the next thing is the rear anti-roll bar and the underpan, you know, the gearbox skid plate. If the front one's got anything to go by, the back one's going to be a bitch as well. It's got similar hardware. So anyway, that's the front. Let me. I'm going to move on to the rear. Well, the front is done. Moving on to the back now. Hopefully, looking at this, it's not too difficult. I don't know whether or not I'm going to need any extra hardware. We'll go from there. But let me. I'll just get myself organised, get the back prepped, ready. I'll open the packet, and then we'll see how we go from there. Well, that took way longer than I was expecting. God, what a pain. I suppose it would make a bit of a difference if I sort of dismantled the car more, but I sort of tried to find a workaround. But the anti-roll bar itself is in the rear. It goes behind sort of the electronic box at the back, and it's got a couple of lugs which fit down. You can just see where the sort of the pin is that holds the man in. It's got like a little bracket, and then it screws down to that little plate here, this sort of pivot arm bushing, if you like, or support. So it's in there, it's at the back. That was a pain in the arse, but anyway, that's that bit. You just got to put the links on, fit the links to the bottom arm, and then it's done. Yeah, I'll go into a little more detail as I get that far. This has taken far longer than I was expecting. Right, so I pretty much just scooted ahead. I was going to film a bit more of the fitting of the rear anti-roll bar, but to cut a long story longer, my God, that was hard work. That, in fact, anything on this car is a bit of a mission. So I'll go over what I've done. So just to quickly summarise, they're all aftermarket bits, so nothing Tamiya. So front and rear anti-roll bar, they're both on, and a gearbox aluminium skid plate, protection plate underneath. And everything was difficult. So effectively, the main problem doing this was because I think you need to dismantle more of the car than I perhaps was prepared or wanted to do. So let me just show you quickly, again, go over what I've done. So let me just move the camera. So you can see here, front anti-roll bar. Fairly straightforward. Some of the hardware didn't fit, i.e. the bolts weren't long enough, so I had to source my own from my spares and bits I've got, which wasn't a problem. But it is on there. It actually, when it went on there, it actually fitted quite nice. So it took a bit of time, but it's on there. Let me show you the rear. So I'm going to have to hold the camera for this one. So behind the driver, there's a box. Now in that box there's a saying, isn't there? No, forget that, right? So there's a box there, and in that is all the control electronics, i.e. the speed control. I think that's what it's in there. The speed controller and the on-off switch. Behind that, as you can probably make out, is the rear anti-roll bar. It's kind of out of sight there and hidden quite nicely. And it's got a couple of links, which I'll show you from underneath. Difficult to see, but in there is a drop link, a bar that goes down. And then that screws, I'll use that with hyphens, screws onto the inner rear trailing arm. But what I did, because it goes right through the trailing arm and then connects to the shock, I drilled that hole out, 3mm, just sort of run a 3mm drill through it. It's only plastic, isn't it? And so the bolt can be just pushed through, not screwed through, because you can't do that from that side. Even with the trailing arm off, it's impossible to do. Let me just move the car again. So yeah, there's a trailing arm behind the shock. The problem is, if you screwed it in first at the bottom at the trailing arm, that screwed it in, you couldn't then twist the link to fit the anti-roll bar. It's absolutely arse about face. Everything created another big issue. Again, the main problem being the hardware. So I had to source a lot of my own longer threaded bolts because the ones that came in the kit just weren't long enough. And it was very difficult. I mean, even if the car was in bits, that's not something which you could put on easier. I mean, I did take the rear end off, the rear trailing arms, the shock, and the trailing arm retainer plates, if you like. So yeah, that was so hard. I mean, I wasn't stressed, but I was to the point of almost giving up, because I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do it without, I don't know how I'm going to do it. Anyway, that's done, it's on, and I've also put the rear gearbox skid plate on. Let me just show you that. You might have seen that as I was moving the camera around, but let me just show you properly. So that's there. So that fits to the back of the chassis, if you like, the sort of the bars, subframe, and it sort of incorporates what's already there, like a brace that goes across the gearbox. Again, not easy to fit when all the bolts are wrong. You just can't do it. Everything lines up with a bar, so you can't get a tool on it unless you've got a different type of tool, which I don't have. So, but anyway, that's quite good. I quite like that because it stiffens the rear end up and it protects the bottom of the gearbox, which I think, to be honest with you, that's a must-have. I mean, if that's all I got, that'd be pretty good. Yeah. So overall, hard work, but worth it. Anything else? So we've put in the anti-roll bar, rear anti-roll bar in the car. The driver figure is just fitted at the front on a body clip. I mean, I've got a light control box in there as well, so I had to trim and cut most of his like the fitting point away. I've now cut more away, so he just sits there. So he will move around when you're driving the car. So you know, it's not going to make a lot of difference. Yeah, so that was tricky. Now, what else have I got to do? So I'm not going to film this bit, but I've got to glue the tyres, fix them to the rims. That's nothing, is it? I mean, that cannot possibly be a headache, can it? It can't be. The other thing, the rear shocks they work really well, but they sag a little bit. Now, again, it's easily perhaps put stiffer springs on or thicker oil. You know, I can get around that. The thing I'm a little bit miffed with is the front shock absorbers. Again, they work great, but they're just too stiff. They were stiff even before the anti-roll bar. Just too stiff. So I need to source some different springs. If there were some lighter springs, and I mean much lighter, it would be really good. The front just sits too high, and its normal standard level position, the front's too high. So I know you can adjust all these, or you can get something to perhaps go, but I don't want to sort of mess around too much. Yeah, I'll figure that out. I'll source some springs. They're fairly standard size springs. I've even got some springs that size, but whether or not they're softer, I don't know. And once that's done, once I've got, there's only that bit to do really, we can get it out for a run once the weather's sorted out. But yeah, overall, there's not many upgrades for this car. However, there's a lot of aluminium upgrades. This is only a snapshot of what I've got. I've got the front bumper, front and rear anti-roll bar, and a gearbox protector, skid plate underneath. There's lots of others. I think you can get these in aluminium, like the crash bars on the side. I'm trying to think what else there was. Obviously, I think there's chassis as well, if you want to go that far. Roll cages, I think there's even those in aluminium. I think that would be quite good. But how far do you go? I mean, I think as a whole, the Tamiya Blockhead Motors Wild One is a fantastic looking kit. Fantastic. I like it. But I think the Wild One in general is a bitch to work on. It's not simple. You can't just take one little bit off and then to get to another bit. I mean, even a Tamiya Hotshot isn't that easy to work on, especially the electrical side of it. Once you've got it built, and the way that I'm only talking about the Hotshot, the original, comes apart. It's not straightforward. But anyway, that's the first video I've done for a while of any upgrades, and the first of two. So this is the first Blockhead Edition Tamiya Wild One upgrade. There will be a running video soon. My next video will probably, it depends on time, but I've got to build the Hotshot, the Blockhead Hotshot. So that one will be coming soon. I've got some more work to do to my 1/12 LMP carpet racer. So there's a few bits and pieces I need to do to that. I've got another upgrade coming from my Tamiya M05 Mini. I've got a load of upgrades. I'm just waiting for one more. It's been shipped, so that will be with me soon. So that will be another video. And any sort of nitro running videos that I want to do. So anyway, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it hasn't gone on for too long. I really would appreciate people like and subscribe. I'm trying to up my followers. I want like elusive 1,000 subscribers. Some people find it so easy, and I'm just find it so damn difficult. I really am trying, but of course, the content's got to be there, and people have got to follow, haven't they? So, and subscribe. Anyway, that's spread the word. It is appreciated. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Any feedback and what you think would be grand, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.